Thank you, Josh. Sometimes we forget how good of a singer you are with the have you sing more. That's great, wasn't it? And it's great to have Charlotte singing with the praise team. You know, it's one of our jobs as a church, a moderate-sized church that's out to change the world, is to be an encouragement source for all the young people in our church. And all of us remember Charlotte when she was a cute little girl. Now she's a cute young lady, and her smile is just perfect for leading singing. So encourage her. Owen's up on the sound, and so we encourage him. We're thankful for him doing that. All the young people, you really make a difference. When I was growing up in a church, it was smaller than this church, and I was involved. I was involved in athletics and things. I taught Sunday school. The kids liked that they had a high school kid that was involved in athletics. They'd come to my games, and I'd mow the lawn of the church, and I'd help on different work days. And I just did it because I'd be in big trouble with my parents if I didn't do it. It actually was the truth. But I came to all the services. But what an investment in my life. I had lifelong friends all through my life that prayed for me and that followed me. And in fact, many of the older people that I had built friendships with when I graduated for seminary, they paid for my way to go to school in Israel. Just totally surprised me. I never would have expected that. So if you're a young person, one young person can change the world. And really, your presence and your energy and your enthusiasm is the heart of Washington Cathedral. If you're old, there's nothing you can do. No, I'm just teasing. We're all young at heart. I've been on a series on trust, and I'm wrapping it up. And really 4 reasons to trust God. The first, we talked about how biblical it is to trust. All the way through the Bible, we're taught to trust God in difficult times, when times that we don't understand. And then we talked about how reasonable it is to trust. So we don't turn off our brains when we trust. It doesn't mean you're going to get scammed or should get scammed. It doesn't mean you should join a cult. It doesn't mean you shouldn't think through your faith, because we love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind. And I always have to remember that, because I get scammed more than anyone on the internet. I mean, you get scammed a lot. I buy the Brooklyn Bridge like 4 times a week. That's how much I get scammed. And I think I'm the main target of all the scamming. So I have to remember, ask someone's advice, think this through. But we trust God because it's reasonable. We don't turn off our brains. We trust God because it's practical. And we talked about that last week, even in difficult situations. Now I want to share with you that we trust God because it's a normal part of our humanity to be trusting, and help you to have a healthy understanding of Christianity and the trust that you need to be able to trust yourself. You can't have a family without trust, and you certainly can't have a nation without trust. And it says in our nation, in God we trust. We need to trust in God. And that's a big part of healthiness. So what I did in the first 2 services, I'm sorry I couldn't do it in this services, I interviewed a couple from our congregation, or one person from our congregation, Scott and Katie Leonard. And I don't know if you know them, but they both are adventurers. Scott was a mountain climber early on. Katie loves horseback riding. She's in the hunters and jumpers group and still does that. That's actually a pretty dangerous sport. If you've ever jumped with a horse, that takes a lot of trust. And I said, we should have had you bring your horse and like jump all the rows just to show people how trusting they would be. And in fact, we met her one time over by the state park in Kirkland when a house was burning down. She was the first one there when I was running in the house trying to help someone. But Scott has loved to be a mountain climber. And so his wife got him a birthday present to do paragliding. Now, do you know what paragliding is? Paragliding's not, at first I thought it was like the suit that you wear where you jump off. I mean, these people really have to be trusting. But it's actually not hang gliding. You have this big, and he brought it in other services, this big wing that's made out of plastic. It has aerodynamically designed so that when you jump, the air flows through it and creates this wing, and then you just dangle over it. And this area is very, very popular. The World Championships takes place in Chelan. And Tiger Mountain, there's a place where they'll have 20 people. They'll go in clusters, and they'll all be paragliding. Are we seeing pictures of it up there? Up above Tiger Mountain. You can Google it on your phone and see pictures of that. And these guys are scientists. They think about it. They train for it physically. They prepare for it. And it's not just blind trust where you just see it on YouTube and then you go and try to jump. And they have a point. Scott was trying to talk me into doing it up at Tiger Mountain where you run and you jump, and it's called Poo Poo Point. And I said that would be named after me if I tried it. But they will glide around. Actually, they've flown all the way to Monroe and back. We have a ceiling here because of the air traffic, but over in Chelan, he did it in Mexico. He went to 13,000 feet. He said there's guys from their group that go up to 19,000 feet. They take oxygen when they do that. And he just loves it. What was interesting, a lot of people from the church came up and said, man, that's so cool. I want to get into it. I wasn't one of them. But, and he talked about all the bubbles of trust. You have to trust the people that help design the equipment. You check it over carefully for its upkeep. You have to trust in your physical preparation. And he talked about when you finally enter into that trust, the first 13 times he did it, he was so worried, soaring over Issaquah, and they even come over Redmond, and they go all around, and the whole time he was just scared to death. He said finally on the 14th time, he said, wow, this is fun. And that's my goal for you, for our church, actually for our nation, because a nation cannot exist without trust either, can we? A family cannot exist without trust or relationships. And for your relationship with God to have a healthy understanding of trust. If you could face the challenge of your life and be able to relax, you can't have humor without trust. You can't have love without trust. Can you imagine going through your life and never daring to trust another person enough to say, I love you? Jackie and I tell each other that every day. I love you. At night, on the phone when we say goodbye. It's kind of embarrassing at a business meeting to say, I love you too, Judy, or whatever. Every morning, every night. It takes trust to say, I love you. Can you imagine raising children without saying, I love you? And can you imagine raising children without teaching them to trust? That's what's happening in our society. Now, I want to say something political, because I never say anything political, but both sides of the aisle need more trust in the United States, don't they? And we can see a combative nature. The history of the United States is that we've always had this combative nature, that we listen to the other sides and listen to their opinions. And so we had two opposites in the founding of the United States. And forgive me if you already know this and have heard this before, but John Adams had his view of democracy, and Thomas Jefferson had his view of democracy. They were very different on banking, on foreign policy, on the balance of power. They disagreed on every single thing, according to both of them. They were interviewed late in their lives. They went to John Adams and they said, there's probably no one in the world that you hate more than Thomas Jefferson. And John Adams said, no, he's one of the people I respect the most in this world. And they went to Thomas Jefferson, not telling him that John Adams had said that, and he said the same thing. That's the way our country's always worked, with people that disagree. That's the only way the United States can work with all of our backgrounds, is if we can have trust, right? And they both died on July the 4th on the same year. It's almost a God thing. And it's my prayer for our church that we can be more trusting. It's my prayer for you in your life. You can understand a healthy concept of trusting God. It's not joining a religion. It's not some blind set of rules. It's not turning off your questions or your angst or the frustrations that you have. That's why so many of these sermons are from Psalms, because they are poetic, aren't they? The psalmist will say, I'm in the pit, God, but I trust you. And I love the song that they sang. It could be our theme song is, even when the mountain doesn't move, even when the waters don't part, I trust you. Because we were designed health-wise, emotionally, and spiritually to trust God. Many people come to our church and they're just don't understand trust because they don't trust themselves. They made mistakes. And so they get to be around people like you that trust them. And young people accomplish great things as church because they get to be around people like you that believe in them. One of my favorite novels, Les Mis, is in a point in that I had almost a first edition. Someone borrowed it and never didn't bring it back. And I underlined in this ancient copy the point when Jean Valjean, this criminal, steals from the bishop his silver candles, and he's caught, and he brings them back, and the bishop says, no, I gave those to him. He would have went back to prison. That single act of trust is the balance point of the whole story. Because Jean Valjean becomes this incredible, trusting, amazing individual. And I would say that you are who you are in your best self because someone trusted you. Remember the first time when maybe you're working with your dad and he gives you a hammer and nail and says, go ahead and pound it in? And you're like, really? You're sure I'm not going to hit my brother in the head with the hammer? Or I hit my finger? Or there's a trust that's involved in that. We all need that kind of trust. And it's not easy because there's a lot of bad things that happen. Getting ready for this sermon and studying in Psalm 91, there's one thing that I like to do. It's probably a bad habit, but I'll confess it to you since you're good friends, and I know you love and trust me even though I'm an imperfect human being. But I allow myself once a week to go out for a hamburger and fries at Burger Master on Saturday. And I relax so much. This isn't a commercial for Burger Master, but it just reminds me of the old days. Sometimes I'll listen to the Husky football game when I'm working on my sermon or something like that. So I look forward to about 2 o'clock, going there and having my one hamburger and fries. And that's expensive. Its price is getting up there to go there. And so yesterday I did like I do every Saturday. I'd missed breakfast. I get up early to start my sermon. I pull over to Burger Master with my best friend, who is my dog, and I even ordered him a little hamburger, a baby burger, and he enjoys the time. Well, this time I pulled up. I ordered the hamburger, and I realized, man, this is $22 for the Burger Master special, and the fries, and the Coke, and my dog's hamburger, and everything. And I had to go to the bathroom. And I thought, what am I going to do? Am I going to trust my dog to leave a fresh hamburger and fries in the car, or am I going to take it in the restroom with me? That's going to even be more strange. So I put it there on the seat, far away from where he is, and I said, Gus, whatever you do, don't eat my hamburger and fries. And then I went into his restroom and came back, and right away I knew something was wrong. Have you seen those things on the internet where the dog does something wrong and they're so guilty? My dog had his big brown eyes and his ears down. And my dog talks sometimes. He doesn't speak English, but he thinks he does. Like when we're calling our cats, he'll say, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. He'll go, so I went up and I said, Gus, what happened? And he looked at me and was like, as if to say, you can't trust me with a hamburger and fries. And almost like a human, he had slowly opened it just like I would and ate it all except for he left me one bite, which I didn't take. And I mean, he didn't even drop a fry. He ate every one of the fries. So I paid $22 and drove away, not having one bite of anything. Don't trust a 120-pound dog in a car with a hamburger and fries. There are a lot of things that we can't trust. Phony religion, someone that's trying to take advantage of you, people that disagree with you that have no ethics and will stab you in the back. But there's so much in life that naturally you'd trust, and there's so much joy that you would have if you can remember not to run from trust. So here's Psalm 91, something I would read to you if you're in the hospital facing a challenge or you'd gone through some devastation in your life. I would read this passage to you. New Living Translation. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High. I've always loved shelters. I'd love to go into the mountains and build a little shelter. and stay there during a storm. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. 14th time, and Scott Leonard starts resting like, wow, this is actually fun. This I declare about the Lord. What you say is important. We talked about that before. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust him. And I want to tell you that when you say, I trust God, it's as therapeutic for you as when you say, I love you to someone. When you say, I trust you to your children, it's as life-changing as saying, I love you to your children. When you say, I trust what God is doing in my life, and you have a sense of trust to handle when the mountains don't move and the waters don't part, that God still has a plan, it causes you to relax, to be confident. Leadership is getting results in a way that inspires trust. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you infuse trust to other people, doubters, people that are from other backgrounds, other philosophies. If you run a team at work you're a good leader, you inspire trust. For he will rescue you from every trap, in verse 3, and protect you from deadly disease. He will cover you with his feathers. Use a picture of this bird taking care of its young. He will shelter you with his wings. His faithful promises are your armor and protection. Do not be afraid. It says it a few times in the Bible, doesn't it? Because we tend to be afraid. Do not be afraid of the terrors of the night, nor the arrow that flies in the day. Do not dread the disease that stalks in the darkness, nor the disaster that strikes at midday. Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, these evils will not touch you. Just open your eyes and see how the wicked are punished. If you make the Lord your refuge, if you make the Most High your shelter, no evil will conquer you. No plague will come near you, your home. For he will order his angels to protect you wherever you go. They will hold you up with their hands, so you won't even hurt your foot on a stone. You will trample upon lions and cobras. You will crush fierce lions and serpents under your feet. The Lord says, I will rescue those who love me. I will protect those who trust in my name. When they call on me, I will answer. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue and honor them. I will reward them with a long life and give them salvation. Now, there's a number of books written on performance and business, on learning, and the importance of trust. I want to recommend to you Stephen Covey Jr. He's not called Jr., but Stephen Covey, the son of Stephen Covey, wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote a book called Speed of Trust. And he talks about how it's impossible to be a business and to succeed without trust in the organization. And the fastest way, he's taken his dad's company, that was a consulting company, and improved its profits by 1,000%. And their focus is to come in the company and say, you guys have to trust each other. Churches have to trust one another. You have to trust what you're doing right now, what God's doing in your life, to be able to move forward, to loosen up, to learn, to grow. He uses example after example about in the military, in the Desert Storm, how one company turned from the worst company to the best company because they had a new commanding officer who emphasized trusting the people next to you, trusting your country, trusting your commanding officers up the line. And with trust, they became the best company. And the same way with businesses that became more profitable and huge things that happened and were breakthroughs because people moved from fear and wondering and questioning each other's motives to trust. Now, there's some basic myths about trust that I want to change. One is that people believe that trust can never be rebuilt, right? Once your trust is broken, you can never be rebuilt. In other words, I should never leave my dog in the car with a hamburger again, right? Wrong. I'm going to train that dog not to do that. Might cost me a few hamburgers. Because we give up on trust, kids learn not to trust their parents. When the parents say, no, don't reach underneath the sink, they know that doesn't mean anything. They're not going to do anything about it. So they keep doing it. So no means nothing to them. Stephen Covey says, unless if you pick them up and close the door and maybe seal it off, but they don't believe in you. They don't believe what you say has any meaning. No, trust can be rebuilt. So many times in 44 years, people have come into any of our pastors, and they'll say something like, man, I've blown up my life. I've made a mistake. And many times it's really young kids, even 13 years old. And I don't trust myself. And just like if you were to go to a mechanic shop, like Tony Wood's transmission shop, and say, I blew my transmission. And Tony would say, look at the sign. We fix transmissions here. Is that what transmissions, what they do? Some of you have had your transmissions fixed there. He even has a radio show talking about how to fix transmissions. I don't listen to the radio show, but I take my car there. Someone comes in and they say, we've broken trust in our marriage. It's all over for us. And I said, no, I think we can handle this. I think we've been doing this for years. I think God can repair your marriage. I think you can learn to trust one another. I think you can trust your kids again. Your kids can trust you. In other words, the myth is that trust can never be rebuilt, right? And that is wrong. All the way through the Bible, it talks about building trust. And it's not blind trust. When you start a relationship with God, which is the foundation of trust, I'm moving around in my notes, but that's right, you guys are used to it. When you trust God, maybe first you're just trusting in a higher power because you're facing an addiction. And that's the beginning. As long as it's authentic and you learn the higher power is God. Then you learn the higher power is Jesus Christ. And you can have this personal, trusting relationship with him. And you can do what I call snuggle with him. You can build your trust by doing things that are just crazy. If you're not a human, if you were a Vulcan on this planet, you know what I mean by Vulcan, Spock? I'm sorry, I'm a Trekkie. But, and you came here and you saw what we human beings do, it'd be crazy, wouldn't it? Because we come into worship and we do this sound where all of a sudden we all close our eyes and we start going, oh, we sing a tune. And it comes from our very soul, I trust you. And we applaud people when we hear music. It does something to our brain and our lives. In other words, you begin to trust from your soul. And so little kids, they can't live without being snug, what I call snuggled, held, right? So when we raised our kids, they're all grown kids. When there was a storm, our youngest, Becca, would come in and we'd hear her knock on the bedroom door and she'd say, Mom and Dad, I need to snuggle. And so we'd say, come on. And she'd pile into bed. And then our oldest daughter, Elise, might come in and, Mom and Dad, I need to snuggle too. I'm down in the basement. There's spiders down there. Okay, pile in bed. And our son would come in and say, what's everyone doing in here? I want to join the snuggling. And then, like one of my brothers who's living with us would come in and say, hey, what's everyone snuggling here? I want to snuggle too. And I'm like, forget it. You're not coming into this bed. But human beings have this capacity that's more than just intellectual reason. It's snuggling. It's a hug. It's holding them tight. Saying sweet things to them that are honest and true. And so it is with Jesus, is that this relationship that we have with him, when you go for a walk, you come back and your mind is so fresh. Or you go for a run. Or you go jump off poo-poo point. And you're sore. The way he was talking about that, what it's like to be at 13,000 feet, looking down and just soaring around. I can't imagine it. I don't think I'll ever experience it until I get to heaven, because they must have nets up there in heaven to catch you. But we were created to trust. It's natural for human beings to trust. You can't tell a joke without trust. You can't love a person without trust. You can't paint a painting without trust. You can't launch a career without trust. You can't go to school without trust. And yet we have a whole world that's terrified of trusting, right? We keep withdrawing because we've been hurt. And we look at the intentions, like, why did that dirty dog, I feed him all the time. I train him. I pet him. I let him lick me, and he has a tongue bigger than Gene Simmons. I mean, he can just sop you, and he eats my hamburger and his hamburger. He already had a hamburger, and he eats my hamburger and fries. Is that relationship broken forever? No. Because he's basically a good dog. He just needs to be trained better. And I'm going to eat his hamburger from now on. Stephen Covey tells a story about this with his parents, and he uses many business illustrations about how important trust is for business. But he tells a story of his dad, Stephen Covey, that wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They have a cabin up in Montana, and they're playing with their grandchildren out in the snow. And they're getting a little bit older, and they were just exhausted doing all the activities from sledding to skiing, snowshoeing, and everything else. And after the full day, they had to drive all the way home to Idaho Falls to get some sleep. And so Stephen Covey was very exhausted, and he talked to his wife, Janet, and they have a nice, fancy SUV, and he put the seats down. And he said, how about if I climb in the back with some blankets, and you just drive as far as you can, and then I'll take over and drive. So she drove as far as she could, and finally she was getting tired, and she said, can you take over? And so there's not many cars in Montana. They just pulled off to the side of the road. And he said, okay, yeah, I feel fresh. I'll take over. So she got out in her socks to get in the back where the blankets were so she could take a nap. He got in, and then she remembered, wow, this fancy SUV that we've got actually lowers the chassis. I don't know about this, but this is the way he tells about it in the book. So you can get in easier, but the door has to be closed. And so she said to her husband, lower the chassis so I can get in the back easier, and then I'll sleep back there, and close the door. As soon as she closed the door, boom, he took off driving. Now, you have to understand that he has a sense of humor, I guess. I don't know him. But his son said that he has a sense of humor that's like Jackie's, because Jackie's played the same trick on me many times. There she is in her socks in the snow, and he's taken off, and she's like, this has got to be a joke. He's going to turn around in just a minute. She watched him, long straight roads in Montana. He doesn't turn around, and pretty soon he's gone. She waits for 5 minutes thinking this is going to be a joke, but he's going to be in big trouble. He still doesn't turn around. Fortunately, someone was driving by and saw the whole thing happen, and they called the Montana State Patrol. So the Montana State Patrol came by. I turned in and said, there's a case of domestic violence that's taken place. So some man abandoned his wife on the highway. And so the State Patrol pulls up next to her and says, were you abandoned? She said, no, I'm Janet Covey, shows her license and everything. And my husband, Stephen Covey, says, Stephen Covey, the author? I've read all of his books. I've attended his seminars. And he says, yeah, he took off without me. And she said, well, is this domestic violence? He goes, no, he thinks I'm in the back. So they get in the car, and they're like trying to chase down Stephen Covey, driving along. And he's thinking the whole time, man, my wife isn't asking to stop to go to the bathroom. We don't have to stop and shop. I'm going to let her sleep as long as I can because we're going to make a lot of progress. So they go miles and miles until finally the state patrolman gets the idea to call him. And so he calls him on his cell phone and says, Stephen Covey, yes, well, this is the Montana State Patrol. Do you know where your wife is? And he says, I know where she is. She's sleeping right back there. And he goes, no, she's not. And he has a little argument with him. He can't turn around. He's driving. So he pulls her and looks back, and lo and behold, his wife had disappeared. And they pulled up, and I'm sure that there was quite a discussion that took place after that. The point that Stephen Covey makes is that it's something their whole family laughs about because Janet and Stephen love each other and have for 45 years. They know each other's intentions. They know that it was a mistake. And it's what could be a devastation to a relationship is a big joke because they trust each other. Well, what happens in businesses if you mistrust everyone around you? They'll probably operate more poorly. What happens in churches if you mistrust everyone around you? It's probably not going to function very well. What happens in a country if we mistrust everyone? What happens in a world maybe it's thermonuclear war that ends up. We need to live with trust and to trust God. And so it's my prayer for you. I care for you. I believe in you. I trust you. That we can all grow more deeply in learning to trust God. Jackie's going to come up and have a closing prayer for us.